The truth occurs. The truth occurs. The truth occurs.
So here was one question. While we're on the subject of the police and overstepping their boundaries, somebody asked in the chat room, do you have to give ID if the police come and ask you for it? So how would you answer that?
Legally, the police, you don't have to give ID. Legally. If you're asking for the law, no. Now, I ask you, do you want to be right or do you want to stand for yourself? Pick your battles, I say, because when they ask you for your ID, they could all call the principle that they're protecting the rest of the people around you because they don't know you. They don't know if you're a threat. Do I agree? Not completely. Do I want to fight that battle? No, because my problem doesn't lie there.
Okay. But if let's say you're jumping rope, for example, the police come up to you and say, stop jumping rope, and you say, well, under what authority can you tell me what is the law to stop, doing this at this time? And then they go directly to, let me see your identification, papers please. Once you give that ID, the government ID, then it's through that identifying yourself as that corporate fictional representation, from what I understand, that's on the ID, that they're then able to give you a ticket. That puts you under their jurisdiction. So, because other people would say, I've heard people saying, well, am I under arrest? Because are they not technically not allowed to search you or ask you for ID unless they're arresting you?
Well, technically, no. Actually, absolutely illegal for them to search you without a warrant. Or
they need a warrant to search you.
Or, which I don't like, legally, if they have enough, let me see if I remember this, probable cause. Mm-hmm. Now, I stated this the other day that we met. I have a problem with this because I'm in the middle. We are humans, and the police, I don't like their training, but if you take the idea of the police, I don't mind the peacekeeping side of the police around me. Mm-hmm. When they act in hunches, because they do, sometimes, like a couple of weeks ago, this cop acted on a hunch, stopped a guy and called for backup to see where the guy was coming from and discovered a dead body of a teenage girl. Mm-hmm. And that's what I say, if not in the case of Karen, because I would absolutely not only not give my ID, but immediately ask them, as you said, Sonia, am I being detained? What are the charges? Am I free to go?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, because jumping rope on the street, it's maybe a nuisance, but it's not really like suspicious activity that would give them a hunch to think that, maybe she's harboring a bomb in her backpack or something like that, right? I mean, the guy coming from that road, it was a remote place, and he got stopped. And when they asked him for identification, he refused, and that was what made them really suspicious, wasn't it? And then they went and searched where he had come from, and they found the body. He was probably acting a little sketchy.
Yeah, it's a hunch. We're humans. They're not RoboCop. I don't know in the future, but now they're still human. Mm-hmm. So in Karen's case, no. Now, there's things that I am always blown away, because that cop could have told Karen, you are in a public space, which is the sidewalk. Now, jumping rope is not illegal, but blocking the passage for others is.
But were you blocking it, Karen?
No, it wasn't being blocked, and I wasn't the only person jumping rope. I was more of a bystander there, but I was just partaking in this, and they were disturbing the peace. Actually, they were disturbing the peace. There was plenty of room. People were walking by. It was a very happy experience for a lot of people, but even though, the police officer could have said, oh, you're in a public place, aren't we technically always in the private, and that we always have a right to our privacy, and that we don't have to show our identification?
No, you don't have to. That's why the questions, am I being detained, what are the charges, and am I free to go, are very important. Because they cannot, if you want to make that stand, like in the case of Karen, if you're being stopped because you're jumping rope, for crying out loud, am I being detained, and what are the charges under what act, law, or regulation? That's the real question. Why are you talking to me? You have no right to talk to me right now at all. Am I doing something illegal? Am I disturbing the peace? Am I conducting, I don't know, any criminal act? No. Am I free to go?
Claim
I'm
that.
not taking any charges.
Well, they could claim that she's disturbing the peace. I think that's what they did, didn't they, Karen? They said,
well, my ticket was for refusing to move on a public side. Refusing to move on a sidewalk when asked by an agent of the peace.
oh, see, well, that was false because you did not refuse to move. You had stopped jumping rope. You were moving. I mean, there's not a law that says you have to be in constant motion on the sidewalk. I mean, you're allowed to stop.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
of course.
So
But that's why it's important to take it to the next level. Because I'm going to tell you, there's a joke out there that explains this. Do you know why dogs lick their balls?
Why?
Because they can.
yeah. I have a dog, so I knew that.
So this is the thing. That cop did it because he knows he can. Because the probability of you pressing charges against him are so minimal that by normal behavior, their power would just amplify by our behavior.
I'd like to tell you, this is a really short segment, I'd just like to tell you a story about the worst experience I ever had with the cops, okay? And I might have told you this one before, but Isabel, welcome back to the show, by the way.
Welcome.
And so let me just tell you this awful experience I had. This was a long time ago. I was about 20 years old. I went out one night, and I partied, and I stayed at somebody's place. And in the morning, I had to leave. It was a snowstorm, snow everywhere in Montreal. It was about 8 in the morning, and I tried to hitch a ride. And a car slowed down, and I went over to their window to ask them, are you going in the direction that I'm going in? The police pulled up behind them. And this was like in a residential neighborhood. The car drove off, and the police came out and started to, I guess you could say, harass me. And, they said, they started asking me for my name. I guess, I don't remember, it's a long time ago, but I think the first thing they did was ask me for my name, my ID. I probably gave it to them because I didn't know any better. And I said, well, what are you doing this for, And they were like, well, you might be engaging in prostitution, which was ridiculous because, I was wearing combat boots and, it was 8 in the morning and whatever. There was no reason to think I was a hooker, right? And I said that to them, like, well, I'm not a hooker. Doesn't it look kind of obvious, And so then they started searching me physically, like it's searching my pockets. And then they told me to get in the car, which I did. And then they asked me for my address, drove all the way to my place, followed me up to my apartment, came in, started looking around with flashlights. And I started thinking, what in the world are they doing? And then they started looking through my personal photographs and asking me if there was any pictures of me naked in there. Talk about overstepping your boundaries. I started to get a little freaked out. I thought, this is going to be one, like, I've heard of cops, really going, like, really, sometimes maybe even, committing some kind of sexual crime against a woman who's alone with them, and what are you going to do, right? But I said, okay, I'm not under arrest. Like, you're not charging me with anything. Can you leave my house now? And they left. But that's how far they went. They actually went all the way to my place and started poking around my stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I had absolutely no idea that I had no knowledge whatsoever of what my rights were and what I could say. That I had no idea that I could say no, or that, am I being arrested or nothing. I had no idea. And this is what happens when you don't know your rights. That's how far they'll go.
Yes, and we are letting them. We are giving them that power. And I go back to the dogs licking their balls because they can. But this is the thing. I think
we're practically licking their balls. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we are overwhelmed by.
Oh, we're going into a break.